Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts, and today I'm back with day number 24 of 30 Days of Sketches with Chrissy's Beautiful Life. Today's sketch comes from Kristen over at Scrappin' on the Fly. I pulled out this Doodlebug Essentials collection that I just recently picked up from Joann's because I wanted to have some Christmas Doodlebug, but I didn't want to pick up last year's line because I was hoping that I could get a hold of the new line that was coming out, which Doodlebug did just announce, so I'm super excited about that. And this collection will go very well with a new one. When I saw Kristen's sketch, my first thought was that I could do some presents on the right-hand side where those little half circles are, and that led me to searching for some type of cut file that would work. I pulled out my Doodlebug collection in the petite prints in the citrus, ladybug, bumblebee, cupcake, and swimming pool because all of those colors match this small collection that I have. And I knew I was going to be backing a lot of cut files and smaller cut files, so I knew I needed a lot of colors. The cut file is currently over on my silhouette, so I decided to go ahead and cut out the photos. These photos are of Christmas Day from 2023, and we decided to get some pictures of us in front of our Disney Christmas tree. We do have 2 Christmas trees in my house. So this is the first cut file that I cut out, and this cut file actually is supposed to span the entire 12 by 12 layout. It is very intricate, and it has some very tiny pieces to it, so it did take me a little bit to get it off of my silhouette mat. On the left-hand side is a Christmas tree, and then on the right-hand side are a couple of presents, and then at the top is garland, which has Christmas lights as well as stars. And I think this is probably the largest cut file that I've ever used. I do end up changing it up a little bit. I go ahead and put the white cardstock back on my silhouette mat to cut the other cut file that I'm going to use for the right-hand side of the layout. Some of these pieces were very intricate, so I did have to use my X-Acto knife to cut out a couple pieces that the silhouette didn't cut out properly. This doesn't happen very often, but I feel like sometimes when there's so much for it to cut, it just has an issue doing it. It wasn't that big of a deal. Most of the pieces came out pretty simply. I did have to cut a couple of them with my X-Acto knife, but nothing that was too hard to do. So when I saw the sketch, my first thought was a stack of presents on the right, and then I thought, well, I could put a Christmas tree in the center of the layout on the left-hand side, which would then mimic the sketch. But I found this cut file, which I loved, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to do that instead of the circles in the center, or half circles in the center. For the presents cut file, I did end up taking 2 of the cut files and merging them together so that my stack of presents was even taller than what it originally was. I could have made it larger, but I didn't want the entire image to be larger. I just wanted the images to be taller. So once I got the presents off of my silhouette mat, I started to back the cut file on the left, and I started with the tree because that one was pretty simple. I pulled out the green in the linen, and I just traced around the edges, and then with my scissors just cutting out right around my pencil line. This is going to allow the cut file to be right behind the white piece that's on the cut file itself. I like when the cut files have these big pieces because then it doesn't take much fussy cutting. I did miss one of the edges over on the far left, so I just traced that real quickly and then cut that piece off. And then I just put some liquid adhesive on the back of the cut file and added the green paper down. My camera did cut off, but all you missed was me putting down the stump of the tree as well as the Christmas lights on the tree. And then I started to back the Christmas lights and the star at the top of the cut file. And this was pretty simple. I actually just pulled out some of my scraps that I keep to create tiny hearts and tiny stars and use that to back some of it. I also pulled out the branding strip. The branding strip gives me even a smaller print, even smaller than the petite print. And I liked that for some of the pieces, especially like the gingham paper. And I really was just looking through any of the colors that would match the paper that was in this collection, and I actually don't end up using any of the paper from the collection. I use all of my petite prints to back these files, and then I do add a couple other pieces, but it's all done with petite prints. So once I got the Christmas tree and the garland backed, I then started to back my presents. I really wasn't going with any type of order for the presents. I was just making sure that none of the colors or patterns were close to each other. So I used the floral pattern as well as the linen and the polka dots and even the stripes. And again, using some of the branding strips on some of the smaller pieces. As I'm putting the rest of the backing down on these cut files, I do want to encourage you guys to check out the playlist listed below. This sketch was very different, so it's going to be interesting to see how everyone else interprets this sketch. So make sure you check them out. Like I said, these photos are from Christmas Day. Eli and I always get brand new pajamas on Christmas Eve. That actually started way back when I was scrapbooking, I don't know, probably back in like mid 2000s, and I went to scrapbook some Christmas photos and realized that I was wearing the exact same pajamas that I had been wearing in the previous year's Christmas photos. And back then I did all of my Christmas photos in the same album. So every year would go in a Christmas album. I have now switched it to years, so it probably wouldn't be as noticeable, but when you are turning a page and it's the exact same outfit that you're wearing, yet a completely different year, it makes a big difference. I started the tradition of the pajama fairy, and the pajama fairy brings us pajamas on Christmas Eve when we are taking a shower. And so I did this even before Eli moved in with me, even before I had any reason to really do that. But I just felt like I needed an excuse to have new Christmas pajamas, and that was just something that I did. So I decided that I wasn't liking the white border around this cut file, so I just cut it out because it's my layout and we can do that. I do get the garland put down, and I know there's this big gap on the right hand side, but I figured I can figure it out later of how I'm going to make this look like a cohesive piece. At first I thought I could just move it around to maybe see if I can line it up, but it just wasn't working. So I took a break from that and decided to lay out my photos. On the left-hand side of the layout, I have this photo of myself, my mom, and my sister, and Eli actually took that photo. He was being really silly when he was taking photos of us. He got down really low, and then he stood on top of the couch and got this photo from above, and so I thought that it was a cute photo of us that he took. And then there's also a picture of Eli with my mom, and then also my niece with my mom. And then on the right-hand side of the layout, there's me and Eli, and then there is this picture of my sister, which is Eli's mom, and then Eli and my niece as well. And then there's a picture of Eli with my niece and a picture of Eli with his mom. So I pull out my T-square ruler to ensure that all of the pieces are straight on the right-hand side of the layout. And then I start to adhere down my cut files. And I wanted that Christmas tree to be right up against the edge, and that's why I ended up cutting the white border off, because I felt like it was taking up space that didn't really need to be there. I then added the one set of presents on the right hand side of the left hand side of the layout, and then added my photos down as well as that garland at the top. I really like my glue press for being able to get these really fine pieces down. Once I got all the photos down, I did use the liquid adhesive to make sure that my Christmas tree was down as well, and then I trimmed off the excess garland pieces. Then I started to put some presents underneath the Christmas tree from the icons that I have. And then I was planning on just adding a couple of presents that were right underneath the tree. I had the big stack of presents over to the far right. I had those two larger presents in the center of the layout, and I thought that this would balance it out. So I just added 4 of the presents down, and then on the sticker sheet it has some candy canes, and I figured that would be a way for me to cover up the edge on the far right hand side. So I added a candy cane in the center of the garland, and then added a candy cane over to the far right, and then adding 2 additional ones. And I honestly think that you really can't even tell that there is a garland piece missing. Then I thought about bringing out these little brad pieces that are actual presents, but I wasn't liking it too well, so I decided to skip that for now. I went back to the icon stickers and I thought I'll just add a couple of presents over next to the larger presents, balancing it out again. And then it just kept going and going. And I was like, I wonder if I can put an entire row of presents down along the bottom. So I did put some of them up on fun foam. I did put some of them flat to the layout. But at this point, I was like, I'm just going to go for it. And if I end up using all of the presents, then that's what I end up doing. And then I decided to also bring back that little brad and add that to kind of the center of the layout. And of course, it took me 2 holes to get the brad in the correct place. But I was honestly surprised that I was able to get an entire row of presents because these stickers are really small. I did have one little present that was open and it had a little stuffed animal in it, and I thought that was really cute. So I did add that one up on fun foam. So after I got all of the presents down, and I did add a little bit of extra adhesive to one just to make sure that it would stay down on the fun foam, I started to work on my title. I do have a bag of just random Christmas supplies. There's some pieces that don't really go to collections, or if I finish a collection and I don't want to use it anymore and I want to donate it, but there's maybe a couple of pieces that are left that I really like, I'll put that in my Christmas bag. And this Jolly title was one of those that was in that bag. So I pulled that out. And then my title is going to be Holly Jolly Christmas. And I used my alphabet die to cut out the word Holly. And then I have this friendship die, and I will link it below. You are able to cut out really tiny squares. Sue over in Nicole's Facebook group created a template for us to be able to print out our own lettering to go with it. You can also purchase the stamp that goes with it. But I like the fact that I'm able to print out whatever color I want and it will cut it perfectly for me. So I did cut out the word Holly twice in the white and stack them. And then I used the bubblegum petite print to cut out the top layer. I also did the same thing with my little squares. I had cut it way too big. So I just decided to use the scraps. It wasn't even going to bother me that part of it was green and part of it was white. Most of it's covered up. You can see a little bit of the green on the side, which I'm okay with. So I did use 2 stacks of the background for the Christmas tile stickers, and then obviously the top layer, which is in the green. I color matched the green for those tile letters using a Doodlebug collection. I just found an image online. I imported it into Canva, which is where the template is, and then just used the color picker to get it as close as possible to the same green as the Christmas tree. I did decide to put that word Christmas up on foam adhesive strips and add it right underneath the word Jolly. And then I did want the word Holly to swing down a little bit into the word Jolly, so I made sure that when I was putting the L's down in the center that it was in the right place so that the Y would fit right over the L. So it does nestle into the word Jolly. And I really like that title. I did use my poker tool to make sure that I got all of the excess glue off of the layout. Then I decided to cut the top part of the cut file again, which is the garland part, and I figured that I could extend the garland over to the right-hand side of the layout. So I have now veered way off from the sketch. I definitely used the sketch as inspiration, but it has gone my own way for sure. I lined the garland up with the left-hand side of the layout. You can see where one of the Christmas lights overlaps the Christmas light that's on the left. And then I also took a piece and added it over to the far right-hand side. So my garland does go over into the right and then almost kind of behind the photos and then over to the very far right. I then pulled out my petite prints again and backed the pieces so that they would match the left-hand side of the layout. And I feel like when you are working with cut files, sometimes they can take a little while to put together and get all of the pieces down, but the end results really do make it worth the work that you have to put in for them, because there isn't a whole lot to this layout. I really just have a lot of photos on here. I was able to get 7 photos on this layout. Honestly, I don't have any true pattern paper to it. It's just these cut files. But I feel like this layout came together pretty easily and it turned out really nice. Over on the far right, I did add this little acetate piece that says 25. And I also pulled out the stickers that came with the collection and used the stickers to put the year 2023. Someone brought up recently in my Facebook group, I don't know if it was Bella Boulevard or if it was Doodlebug, but they talked about how the numbers were not the same size, and that makes no sense to me at all. And that's how these stickers were. The 2 and the 0 were pretty much the same size, but the 3 is significantly larger than the 2 and the 0. It makes no sense whatsoever. After I got the year down, I did go ahead and add another Christmas present brad right next to it. And then I decided that I needed to stitch on this layout. I mentioned it in a previous video where I talked about I'll go through these phases of wanting to stitch on everything and then also not wanting to stitch on anything. And when I saw this cut file and when I was putting this layout together, I knew that I wanted to do a ton of stitching on this layout. So I did decide to do all tone on tone. So I'm just going to use some white thread, and I stitched the garland on both the top left and top right. And then for my presents, I decided that I would just do the presents that have the cross or T in them. I guess it's supposed to be like the ribbon pieces, but I decided that I would just go ahead and add a row of stitching on those crosses or T's. Once I got all of my holes punched, I did pull out my stitching tools. This includes my threaders, because I cannot thread a needle, as well as my white thread and my needle. Just started doing a back stitch on this garland piece. I do show you a little bit of it here, and then I do slow it down so you can see the pieces that I added. But then I did go off camera and stitch the entire layout, and I have slowed it down here as well so that you can see all of the stitching that I added to the garland on both the left and right hand side of the layout, and then also down the presents. I then found this wood veneer that spells out the word December, so I added that right above the acetate piece that has the number 25 on it, so it says December 25. And I did use the glue press to get that down, and then once I have all of the liquid adhesive on it, I do add my stamping block to it to put some weight on it. And then this little wood veneer set that I got from Freckled Fawn also came with a wood veneer present, so I thought that I could add that to the left hand side of the layout so that I could bring the wood veneer to both sides. And then that is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I did do my journaling off camera, and my journaling says, "This year we decked the halls and jingle belled our way through Christmas Day with Nana, Lisa, Jennifer, Eli, and Nevaeh." Make sure you check out the playlist listed below so that you can see how everyone else interpreted this sketch. And I will see you guys tomorrow. If you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.